time to move from the spectrum of polarizing conversation and indifference to come to the table where we see a rainbow of color and every voice is heard. It's time to move our dreaming to our living. The time is now. Black Lives Matter. Now we're going to hear from human voices that have a divine message, from a collaboration, because it's not going to take one, it's going to take all. Thank you for being here. The time is now.
Testing. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just go with the. Good afternoon, everyone.
We'll keep cheering for you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
On behalf of Beyond the Wall Jug and Dog Group, I want to thank you guys for coming out here today. My name is Brian Brown II. Before we get started, first and foremost, I would like if we could all pause and have a moment of silence to honor all the black lives that have been lost to police brutality. Thank you. Today we've gathered to recognize the loss of black lives like Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. These are only a few of the most recent deaths, as there are countless number of black lives who have been lost to police brutality, racial injustice, and racial profiling. And let's not forget the millions of black men and women who on a daily basis battle racial discrimination, profiling, injustice, and centuries of systemic inequality. The truth is, we can no longer sit back and wait for change to happen. We must be the change agents ourselves and demand justice now. I'd like to share a quote that I found extremely relevant over the last few weeks from the late Dr. King. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Thus, I'd like to issue a challenge for us all. Because to put it plain and simple, this protest won't be enough and isn't enough for actual change. Together, while we march today, I want everyone to think of the kind of world we want our children to live in. Our children's children. What kind of legacy do we want to leave behind? The Black Lives Matter movement desires no preferential treatment, nor do we value our livelihood more than any other ethnicity. At its core, life is hard. And every day, as we battle this, we simply ask that our color does not add to this innate difficulty. In order to do so, we must unite, research and acknowledge our history on how we got here, educate ourselves on our current policies and infrastructure, and most importantly, take action to ensure everyone has equal opportunities for higher education, financial assistance, employment, healthcare, legal representation, leadership roles in our community, safety, a fair legal process, justice, peace, and at its core, simple happiness. None of us can do it without the other, or without the person to your left and right. One might call it divine intervention, how in the middle of a pandemic, without sports, without concerts, with radical changes to our everyday lives as we know it, that somehow we find ourselves in one of the rare moments in history where we have the entire world's attention on one issue. We must not take it for granted. To close, I'd like to leave you with these words from Malcolm X. You don't stick a knife in a man's back 9 inches and then pull it out 6 and say you're making progress. Meaning we have a lot of work to do, and that work starts now. Thank you.
Test 1, 2. Let's test this one.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was very well said. Proud to call you my brother times like these. Can't hear? I said, thank you, Brian. It was great to hear. I'm very proud to call you my brother during times like these.
Good.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brianna Brown, and I wanted to thank all of you for coming out today and giving your time, energy, and resources to this important cause. When thinking about what I wanted to say today and how I wanted to do it, my mind began to race. I thought of the countless people of color who have lost their lives to police brutality and injustices, my friends and family members who have been questioned, harassed, or even bullied by law enforcement solely because of their skin color, and how these things happen not annually or weekly, but daily, hourly, right now as I speak. These things some of our fairer complexion peers will never experience, let alone know about. It's nothing short of appalling to me that it has taken wrong convictions, countless heartbreaks, and the loss of innocent lives for our nation to wake up and finally come together to begin to implement and create positive, long-lasting change. With that said, I am grateful that this revolution is happening, that I get to be a part of it, and we'll be able to look back on years like 2020, days like today, and say that we did our part to create a better, equal, more peaceful, and just society for everyone to live in. Hence why we are here today. Not to ask for sympathy, pity, or handouts, but to be given the same treatment, opportunities, and perceptions that our oppressors have been given their entire lives. If you're wondering what, if anything, you can do if you feel voiceless or insignificant during this time, the answer is yes. You can always do something. Here are a few of those things. Start with yourself. Get educated. Brush up on today's current issues and distressing events that stem from centuries of racism, inequalities, and privilege. Watch movies, podcasts, read books, sign petitions. Donate your funds, time, and resources, like many of you are doing today. And challenge yourself, your friends, family, institutions, or groups that you're a part of, even people on the street, to never again be a bystander, but actively and passionately advocate, show up, and show out for those you see fall victim to treatment that lacks love, respect, and kindness that everyone deserves to be treated with. Lastly, I wanted to leave you with these words from Marianne Williamson to consider and try to remember once the protest cease and these revolutions quiet. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Thank you.
Okay, both of them are working. Hallelujah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Are we ready to fight for justice? All right, let's go. I'm Shirley Jenwright, and I am from the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King, so I know about marching. Unfortunately, we are marching 55 plus years later for the same thing. But what we came out with was a civil rights movement. We came with our act to vote. So therefore, I expect all of you to vote. All of you, if you're not registered to vote, make sure you get registered. I am so proud of our young people who got together and used social media. I'm still trying to figure out, I didn't get on Twitter too much, but I'm trying to figure out some of these social media things, and they can put them on in one day and have 1,000 people gather the next day. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But more importantly, I look around the crowd. When I was marching, everybody was marching, the majority were black. Now we see a very diverse group. And we just thank you so much for realizing that black people still don't have the justice that we need. We still don't have housing. We still are economically challenged. We still don't have salaries the same as others. Education, we're still lacking there. And I just heard this week that our technology school with T.J. Thomas Jefferson did not have put in place one black student. You can't tell me that there are no blacks qualified to go to TJ. I don't believe that. That's one of the things we need to change, and we've been fighting for that for a while. So how much longer do we have to fight for that? Our tax dollars have to fund that school as well. So maybe that's something we need to get rid of. Having these schools that blacks are disqualified from because their parents cannot afford a tutor to get them up to speed to pass the test or 10. That we need to change. Recently, Governor Northam established an African American Advisory Board, and I am honored to be on that board. And it's really interesting because I was talking to one of my Asian friends the other day, and she said, the African Americans are just getting a board when we've had one for years, and you were here before we were. Isn't that amazing? But I am pleased to be on that board, and I'm also on the Criminal Justice Subcommittee, the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Subcommittee. So we have an opportunity to make recommendations to the governor on some of the changes that we make. One of the recommendations that I made in January was that we have a database to track all police officers who have been fired from one police jurisdiction and who goes across the street and join another, okay? But not only do we need to do that, that database should include anyone who has gotten the word that they were going to get fired, or knew they were, and then decide to resign. Well, the consequences are the same, but they still leave and go get a job somewhere else. I was very pleased to hear the other day where our Democrats on the Hill, the Senate and the Republicans, decided to put a Justice in Policing Act in place. Now, it's probably going to be tough to get them across the Senate with the Republicans, but that's okay, at least they put it together. But part of that act was that they would have a national database to track all police officers who have been fired where they cannot be hired in any other state. So that is a big plus. But you know what? It's because of you, the young people who are out here marching. So your voices have been heard and you've already made changes and you ain't through marching yet. So look at what you're doing. Look at the differences you're making already. I heard the other day it said this isn't just a march, this is a movement, and that's what you have here. You know, so at the end of the day, when all this smoke stops, you have to continue fighting. I need you to make sure you get on some of these local boards. Start training yourself how to be a politician. Get on some of the state boards and commissions. Get around the table when we reach out and say, hey, look, we're changing police policies. We need you to come around the table so your voice can be heard. If there's something in the policy that you don't like, then make the recommendation to change it. Be around the table. That's where your voice is going to be heard in addition to on the street. But don't let it stop there. Several years ago, Senator Adam Evans, who's here today, introduced a decriminalization of marijuana bill. And we fought for years. I would go to Richmond and testify. I got a couple of pictures of some of our representatives actually took a nap while we were trying to testify. So we knew they weren't interested in doing it. And I congratulate Senator Evans because he stuck to it, and this year the bill was passed and Governor Northam signed it into law. That's a major impact for some of our kids. When I was the president of Fairfax NAACP, you would not believe the number of people that came through saying, hey, look, we need to talk to you because my son got stopped. So once you get a criminal charge, especially on drugs, a lot of the federal benefits, you lose. So we can't get that. But again, I ask you young people, don't let your movement and your marching and your voice stop here. If it's something specific you want a blue dog and a pink cat, that's what we need to know from you, because that's actionable. So don't be broad with it. Tell us exactly what you want so we can go and fix it. One of the things that I did is establish the Communities of Trust Committee 6 years ago to help build relationships between law enforcement and the community. As a result of that, we have citizens that sit on boards. We have citizens that sit around the table and have, including the use of force policy, to make changes in those policies. I have an excellent relationship with the law enforcement in Fairfax County because I got to know them. And that's what we have to do. We have to educate ourselves, and get to know the people that represent us. Don't just complain about it. Get to know them. I heard last night, well, the police don't come in our area. Yeah, they do, because I've been down there with them. You didn't show up. They showed up. So we need to make sure that we're there to support them at all. So with that, and I don't want to hear not one boo because of what has happened down here, because everybody's doing it, I would like to introduce my friend, Chief Edward Rossler.
First, I want all of you to know I pray for our community, the communities across this nation, and all around this earth. The law enforcement profession needs change, continual change. Here in Fairfax County, as Shirley just mentioned, we co-produce our policies with our community. We are the gold standard for the rest of the 18,000 law enforcement agencies in this country. We know there is disproportionality in our contact and our use of force with the African American community. It needs to change. We are studying that here, and we shall create change here. And all of us together as one need to do that. One voice.
You did that too easy like that. I got a question.
I will work with every single person here and throughout this county to change the way we do business here in Fairfax County. It's a never-ending struggle, and especially throughout this nation. There's too many lives lost, especially in the African American community, and we shall create that change. God bless you all. Thank you.
We reached out to Richmond and we say, hey, look, we're having this rally and we need somebody to come up here. But one person that I knew I could get, who I could also call a friend because we've known each other for quite some time, and before he became the Lieutenant Governor, and I would like to introduce to you our Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Gum Springs, Mount Vernon, Fairfax County. Thank you all so much for coming together as a community at a really defining moment in the history of Virginia, but also of our nation. I love what I see out here today. I see people from every race, creed, color, nationality coming together to speak with one voice, to say that not only do Black Lives Matter, but Black Lives Matter 365 days a year. They don't just matter when we have a tragedy in our communities. They don't just matter when something goes wrong, but they matter every single day. And to me, it is particularly important for Virginia to speak up with that voice, because it is in Virginia that 400 years ago last year, we commemorated two extraordinary moments in history. One was the first meeting of the General Assembly of Virginia, where I now preside over the Senate as Lieutenant Governor and President of the Senate of Virginia. But the other thing that happened in 1619 in Virginia is that 20-some-odd Africans were forced to land in Virginia, Hampton, Point Comfort, Fort Monroe. And that was the beginning of slavery here in North America. And those have been the dual strands of darkness and light that have run through the veins of the Commonwealth of Virginia and through our nation for the past 4 centuries. But the good news is that in 2020, this year, this is the first year of the next 400 years. We get to write a different story for Virginia and for America. We don't have to be shackled by our past. We don't have to be borne down by the sins that have created so much that is wrong with our society. So you all are the authors of a new story in Virginia and in America. You're a light in the middle of the darkness. And if you look at your television sets and you see what's happening in Virginia and you compare that with what's happening around this country, we are deciding to do this in a different way. We are deciding to come together as one people to create long-lasting and sustainable change, to fight for justice and fairness and opportunity for every single one of us, but in particular, for those who've been burdened for the past 400 years by those original sins of slavery. And so I was just down in Richmond last Thursday with the governor, and we made an announcement that we're making a down payment on the change for the next 400 years. We're taking down the Robert E. Lee statue right there in Richmond and letting people know that we will no longer tolerate what that statue stands for. We will no longer tolerate that people are oppressed and kept down and held down. But again, as I said then, and as we all say together now collectively, that is merely a down payment on the change that must happen. Because we have living monuments to the Confederacy here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have living monuments to racial oppression. And those living monuments are dilapidated schools that Black and brown children walk into every single day. That reminds people what the Commonwealth has thought about them for the past 400 years. Those living monuments are the disparities in healthcare, where outcomes for Black and brown people are worse on every conceivable level. Those living monuments are a broken criminal justice system that must be fixed, where young Black people are overrepresented by 3 and 3.5 times in our juvenile prison population. And so those are the monuments that we must take down next. And today in Gum Springs, the oldest African-American community in Fairfax County, founded in 1833 following slavery, you stood up then and you said, we are going to go in a different direction. We are going to take control of our own community, of our own lives. And now we are asking you to do that for Virginia, for the nation, and for this world. You are a light in the middle of a global darkness. And I want to end by telling you this. You all know that my last name is Fairfax. I was born with that last name. But I didn't know how I got it until the week of our inauguration as Lieutenant Governor in January of 2018. That week, they discovered in the old Fairfax County Courthouse a deed of manumission, which is a freedom document that had freed my great-great-great-grandfather, Simon Fairfax, from slavery in Fairfax County, Virginia, on June the 5th, 1798. He was freed by a man named Thomas Fairfax, who was the 9th Lord Fairfax, for whom this entire county and city are named. And so 20 minutes before I walked out the steps of the Capitol to take the oath of office as the 41st Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, my father handed me a copy of that document. I saw it for the very first time in my life. And I had it in my breast pocket as I took that oath in Richmond. And so 220 years later, Simon Fairfax's great-great-great-grandson was being sworn in as the #2 in command of the very same state where he had been enslaved. We serve a mighty God. We are on a different mission here in Virginia, in the place where slavery began. Let us end oppression here, not just today, but for the next 400 years. You all are authoring a new chapter in the story of this nation and of our Commonwealth. And so in the place where it started is where it will change. And the final thing that I will say, because the chief came up, and Shirley Jenwright is an incredible person and a great hero and a fighter for justice for many years, but Chief Rossler has done a fantastic job. And I want to say this, because I don't believe in coincidences. It was this past Friday, on June the 5th, that we celebrated that 222 years of the emancipation of my great-great-great-grandfather. We recognized that as I was in Fairfax County. But that was also the same day that we had an incident of police brutality, of excessive force, which we have all seen on our television screens. We have seen the video of what happened. And so even on that day, 222 years to the day, where we were celebrating the progress that had come, we were reminded of how we have so much further to go. But I want to say that I was proud that our chief stepped up immediately and said, this is wrong, this will not happen again. We as a county and as a community have to step up and say what is right, and we have to hold people accountable to make sure that they are part of our communities, that we are lifting people up. And so right now, you're setting a different standard in Fairfax and in Virginia, a standard that we want the nation and the world to follow. So march today, continue this movement tomorrow, and make sure Black Lives Matter 365 days a year. We love you all. Go Virginia. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for your leadership.
That Bishop Sharma Lewis would come forward.
I promise you I won't be long, because how many of you know we came out here to march? Amen? First of all, my name is Bishop Sharma Denise Lewis, the resident bishop of the Virginia Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. I would like, let's give God some praise for the United Methodists. I would like quickly to take this opportunity to thank Reverend Dr. Brian Brown, pastor of Woodline Faith United Methodist Church, and let's give a shout out for the young adults of Beyond the Wall Ministry. Taking a lead to organize this March for Justice, I am very grateful that many of you from around the DMV came out today to support our future generations. Of course, we've been quoting this quote. In 1967, Martin Luther King spoke and uttered the words, "A riot is the language of the unheard." And this statement, as you know, have been echoing throughout the social media for obvious reasons. But however, the last sentence of that speech resonates more today. And that last sentence, Martin Luther King says, "And what is it that America has failed to hear?" What is it that America has failed to hear? I'm glad you asked. See, I believe that America has failed to hear that our young adults, say young adults, our young adults will no longer, say no longer continue to sit idly by and allow the racial injustices and disparities to go unnoticed. I believe that America has failed to hear that our young adults, say young adults, our young adults are tired of being the targets of police brutality, mass incarceration, and simply devaluing of young black men and women. And beloved, I believe that America has failed to hear that our young adults, say young adults, our young adults want to become transformative, effective leaders. So today, my brothers and sisters, we witness this March for Justice rally as a beginning to a long journey. And the greatest question for all of us is what is going to happen 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now? When do we decide that enough is enough? And when do we decide to have crucial conversations? I believe that everything in life begins with the story you have accepted as truth about yourself and others. And these stories can shape you good or bad. But I vow, as the resident bishop of the United Methodist Church, to continue to engage clergy and laity in the DMV, in the Virginia Annual Conference, to have authentic, say authentic, crucial, say crucial, conversations, say conversations, about race and reconciliation. And where are we going to have these conversations? We're going to have them in our churches, say churches, in our communities, in our workplace, and in our homes. In this conversation, we are going to acknowledge that racism is a what? Sin. And I know sometimes you all say that we talk too much, and talking is not enough because we've got to start somewhere. How many of you all believe that humanity is broken? And it is broken because we don't know each other. So let's start having a conversation.
Good afternoon, everyone, or evening. I don't know what time it is. So my name is Dominique Campbell Thornton, and I'm here on behalf of Beyond the Walls Church. Before we get started with our march, I'd like to thank Deputy Chief Gun Lee for marching alongside us. He could be anywhere right now, but he decided to walk with us to fight against racial injustice and police brutality. So let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. And so, before we start our march, right, the best part, what everyone came here for, I'd like to let you all know that there is a car parked right behind this tree. It's a white car, right? A white hybrid. Not sure the make and model, but please move your car so that you don't get towed or hit. Either way, make sure you're safe. And the last thing I'd like to let you guys know is that there's a sign here. It says County of Fairfax Public Library. If you do not have a sign, we have tons of signs in a Staples box right there that you can use to bring along with you during your march. Okay? Everybody ready? I said, is everybody ready? All right, everyone start lining up at the public library sign. Thank you.
We're going to be waiting for some of our activists that have been on the fight for a long time. They can't make the 2-mile walk because of health reasons. But we did not want to let that be a reason why they can't lead the parade, why they can't lead the march, because the upswell that we're experiencing now comes from the days and the years that they went through what we're going through now and their ability to stay disciplined in the march. So we're going to wait for the cars, and then the choir will start, and then we'll follow around. And remember, grab a sign if you don't have one. Our time is now.